We're just gonna do a little challenge. I'll walk you through. Today we're gonna pretend you know absolutely nothing at all about Java coding or anything. And the best way to learn how to code is to do challenges. So as much practice as you can get, you will watch tutorials, but the best way is hands-on. So we're just gonna go through this challenge really quick, this add, subtract, multiply, or divide, and we're just gonna go over some stuff. We're here like pretending you know absolutely nothing at all about anything that has to do with Java. So brain fresh new. So what this is asking us is to write a function that takes two numbers and returns if they should be added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided to get 24. So, and if none of these operations can give 24, then we're going to return none. Okay, so then here it gives us some examples. It says if 15 plus 9 is 24, so then this would return added. 26 plus 2, 26 minus 2 is 24, so this is going to return subtracted. 11 and 11, you can't multiply them to equal 24, you can't subtract them, you can't add them, you can't multiply them, so we have no options. And then in this case, that is going to be none. So we have our instructions. What I like to do, because with this specific program, you have your instructions, you have your code, you have your resources, solutions, and comments. But we are just wanting to figure out how to code this, right? So what I like to do on this specific website is I like to comment the instructions here, so I don't have to go back and forth and look at it. I want to have them here in case I forget what the purpose of this program will be. And by this program, I am referring to this. So let me just go over what a comment is real quick. A comment is something that isn't going to be part of the code that is running by the program. It is just basically there for other programmers to look at your code and kind of know what you're talking about, knowing what your code does. And we have we can either do a single line comment, and that will just use two backslashes. But if we have a multi-line comment, we want to use a backward slash and the asterisk. So this is a multi-line comment, and that is just basically when it is multiple lines. So this comment right here is a multi-line comment. It's taken up in line 1, line 2, and line 3. So we use an asterisk at the end of it and a backward slash and at the beginning of it as well. If it's just a single line comment, this is how we can comment them out. And this is in Java. In Python, there's different ways, but this is specific for Java, which is what we're going over today. So that is how you make a comment, which again, it's not part of the code. It is in the sense that it isn't going to be ran. It is just there for other users to read. So here we have our function, and just by looking at our function, we can tell a few things. So first of all, we know that this is going to return a string. There are different data types in Java. We have integers, we have strings, we have floats, we have doubles, booleans. But in this case, we are wanting to return a string. Now, what is a string? That is like a very big fundamental of Java. Of any programming language. So a string it's going to be anything in quotes. So for example, I'm going to create a variable, and it's going to be of type string, and then I'm going to create one of type integer. So let's say I'm going to say string, and I'm going to call it my string. And this is going to be, hi, I am a string, with a smiley face because we are happy people. Okay, and anytime you end a statement in Java, you want to include the semicolon. So these are a lot of things that we're going over, but this just whenever you're coding, just keep in mind, practice. It is like learning a new language. At first everything's confusing, but then eventually everything starts to make sense. So we have string, my string, and this is an equals here. This is not an this is an equal sign, but in this case it means that it is assigning, it's an assignment operator. So an assignment statement. So it means that the variable my string, it's assigned to the string, hi, I am a string. Okay, and so now we are going to create a variable of integer type. So this is going to be an int, my int, and we're just going to assign it the number 2. Perfect. Now, if we wanted to put the number 2 as a string to make it a string, we could say string, and we'll call it a string 2. And this is a string in this case. So these two will both, when you print them out, they will both print the number 2, but they are of different data types. This is an integer and this is a string. And the reason that this is important is because we can do different things with different data types. So if I wanted to add 2 plus 2, it would have to be an integer because I can't add strings. I cannot say 2 plus 2, and this will not give me 4. This will not give me 4. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that it is an integer if we're wanting to add it. So that's a little bit of what, a little rundown of what different data types are, but we'll get further into it. We're just kind of going over this challenge again. If there's any questions at any point, definitely let me know. So what we have right here, we have our method, and again we are asking for a string. This method is going to return a string. So whatever this does, the output, what we're going to return, what we're going to achieve from this is a string. And what we're asking the user to input, these are our inputs right here. This is the name of our method. The method's name is operation. The method type will return a string, and the method is asking the user to input integers, 2 integers to be specific, and those are separated by this comma. So we're asking the user for 2 inputs, and both of these inputs, we're asking them to be integers. Okay, so what do we do now? We want to return different things. Remember, we want it to return added, subtracted, or none. And these are all strings. So we're not returning a number. We're not returning an integer. We're returning a word that is inside a string, or a string word. So we're going to need if statements in this case, because it's kind of like when we're driving. When we drive, if red, stop. If green, go. If yellow, slow down. So we're going to do different things depending on what these numbers, on how these numbers equal 24. So if the number equals 24 by subtraction, this method is going to do something. If we get the solution of 24 through addition, it's going to do something. So we're going to have different things that we're going to do depending on how we get our solution, right? So just to give a little example, like if, and this isn't going, this isn't part of the code. So, but if the light was green, we're going to go. But else if, so let's say the light isn't green. So then now we're going to go to our next option. This is kind of like going through a series of options. Like, okay, our first option is going to be if green. I'm going to check if it's green. Okay, it's not green. So what's my second option? So think of it as this is your first option, and then think of this as your second option. So if this is green, it's going to go. If this is not green, if it's else if yellow, we're going to slow down. This is if we're driving. And this is your third option. And this is like, okay, we only have three options. Our three options is green, yellow, and red. So if it's not green, if it's not yellow, then it's going to be red, right? So in that case, we would stop. So we know we only have three options. Here in this specific challenge, we kind of have to figure out how many options we have. And that's something we're going to go over. So like, okay, we have the option of it being added, the option of it being subtracted, multiplied, or divided. So it looks like we're going to have about 4 options. That's what we're looking at. So we're looking at either added, subtracted, multiplied, and we wanted to do different things. So this is one of the options that we have, green. And if it is green, the action that we're gonna do is go. If the option is yellow, the action that we're gonna do is slow down or speed up if you want to pass that green light, depending on how you're feeling that day. And our last option, because we know that when it comes to red lights, we only have 3 options. So our last option is red, and we know that if this is our last option, then our action that we're going to do is stop. Okay. Oops, I did not mean to move that. But anyways, so the way that we're going to format this is going to be, we're going to start with our first option, which starts with an if. If, we'll go ahead and start it, we'll do added first. So if num1, which is our first input, and when we're doing the if statements, at this point, we don't have to write the data type in front of it, because it already recognizes it by, it recognizes that it's going to be an integer. So it already knows this at this point because you already specified this up here. So we're going to say num1 plus num2. If num1 plus num2 equals 24, what do we want it to do? So this is our option. This is if this is true. If num1 plus num2 does equal 24, we want it to return, and this is a very beautiful word. The return word is a very beautiful word, which is it's signaling your method to, okay, stop right here and return added. At the end of our statement, because this is a statement, you're telling it return added. We are going to end it with a semicolon. So if the user inputs 2 numbers that add up to 24, this is going to exit right here. It's going to check if number 1 plus number 2 is 24, and it's going to be like, okay, yep, it does. So then we are going to return added. But let's say it doesn't. Let's say the user input numbers that don't equal 24. So then it's going to move on to the next option. So then we write our else if, our option number 2. And what we want to do right here is we'll go ahead and move on to the subtracted. We'll just go in order. So what we can do is if num1 minus num2 equals 24, then we want it to return. Anybody want to take a guess? That's right. It is going to return the string subtracted. Remember, we are returning a string. If we were returning an integer, it would be like return 1 or return num2, and then this would return an integer. It would know that it's an integer type. But Java recognizes that this is a string because of these double quotes, and so it recognizes that this is a string because every time we use quotes around something, it means that it is a string. So it is returning a string. But what if, do we stop here with our subtracted option? Do we stop here? what if num1 minus num2 does not equal 24, but num2 minus num1 does equal 24? We could write another else if statement. So we could say else if num2 minus num1 equal 24, return subtracted as well. But you know, it's a little bit easier to just keep it in 1. So we could just do this thing again, return subtracted. We could do this again, but you know, let's just save an extra line today, and just put it all in 1. So let's delete this. So instead of just writing them in two separate options, in two separate if statements, else if statements, we're just going to do it in 1. So we can do math absolute value of num1 minus num2 equal 24. Now, this is something that is in the math module of Java, and we'll learn more about this. But this is kind of like if you were writing in regular algebra, if you were writing your, let me make it, remember, this is for a comment. If you were writing the absolute value of a minus b, it's going to equal 24. So this right here, this in computer science language is the same thing as this in the math language. So language is beautiful. There's just different ways to express things, and this is just how we would be expressing it so that a computer understands what we're talking about in Java. So absolute math, absolute value of num1 minus num2, and then this little dot right here is so that we can bring up different things that this class can do. So and this is already programmed to do the absolute value of these two, so we can make our life simple and just do that, and we'll learn about all these things. Again, we're just going over a little challenge and kind of going a little bit over some of the things that we can do in Java. But there's so many things we can do, which is why computer science is amazing, because we can do so many things. We can get so creative. And same with math. Math is awesome because there's so many things that we can do. So we'll do that, and I can leave this here so that you remember what this is doing, which is, again, just taking the absolute value, and I'll write it, of num1 minus num2. But it's the same thing as if we were saying like a minus b equals 24. So we're saying if the absolute value of number 1 minus number 2 is 24, then and that it doesn't matter which way it does, it's gonna equal 24, then it's gonna return subtracted. Now, okay, so we did our subtracted options, and now we are wanting to do our we're wanting to do multiplied. Okay, so now let's say the user inputs 2 numbers, right? And then it checks it through here first, and it's like, oops, it doesn't add up to 24, so then it's going to move on to the next option. Oops, it doesn't subtract to 24. Okay, well then we are going to go through to our third option, which is multiplication. So now we are wanting to do another else if statement. So we're going to do else if, put our little parentheses to specify what we're looking for, and that is going to be num1 times num2 equals 24. So now we're going to check, okay, well, if it doesn't add up to 24, and if it doesn't subtract to 24, then does it multiply to 24? And the reason we're using two doubles, like a double equals sign right here, is to specify that this is the equals operator and not the assignment. So we're not assigning a specific spot, like we're not assigning we're not assigning it to in memory to where the number 24 is. We're saying this is a mathematical operation, and this is going to equal 24. So in Java, this is the equals, and this is to assign, right? This is to assign something. Kind of like when you get assigned a paper. Let's say you have a writing class, and each student is going to write about something else. Everybody's going to have a specific story, but the teacher's going to assign what story you write. And so this is basically the assignment operator. So you get assigned to write about turtles. Your classmate gets assigned to write about computer science. So you don't equal a paper about turtles. You and your classmate doesn't equal a paper about computer science. That is not what you're equal to, but that is what you are assigned. You, the person, is assigned that. So in this case, we are not saying that num1 plus num2 will be assigned to 24. We're saying that that equals 24, that it is the same as writing 24. It's like the same as 1 plus 1 is the same as 2. It is equal to 2. It is the same as the number 2. So now we're going to check to see if, oops, and I completely spelled that wrong. Spelling is important, but especially in computer science, but we all make mistakes. So if you have a lot of typos, don't worry, just make sure that you double check your code. So now we're gonna say if this, what are we gonna return? We're gonna return a string. How do we know how to return a string? Or double quotes. In Java, it always has to be double quotes. You cannot use single quotes like this. It absolutely, if you're going to return a string, it has to be double quotes. So we're going to return multiplied. There you go. And just to make sure that my spelling is correct, I'm going to go ahead and copy it from here. Added, subtracted, multiplied. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to go to our final option. Is it divided? And then if none of these are true, then we're just going to say none. You put the user input numbers that can't do any of these options. So technically, this isn't our final option. Our final option is none. But in the sense of whether they can be multiplied, subtracted, or added, this is our final option. So, but because it is not our final option in the code, we're gonna use another else if statement, and num1 divided by num2. We're gonna see. So we're gonna say if this does equal 24, if num1 divided by num2 is 24, what do we want to return? Anybody want to take a guess? Correct. We're going to return divided. And because I'm insecure about my spelling, we're going to go ahead and there you go. We're going to go ahead and copy it from the comment up here, which has correct typing. So divided. Okay, now let's say the user input 1 and 2, and it checks it first. Can 1 and 2? So 1 plus 2 is 3. That's not 24. So it's gonna go to the next statement. 1 minus 2 is -1. The absolute value of that is 1. That doesn't work. And so then it's going to check it's going to go to the next statement, and then 1 times 2 is 2. Again, that's not 24. So it's not going to return multiplied. It's going to go to the next statement. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. That does not equal 24. So we're not going to return divided. Okay, we're like, okay, well, if none of these things worked, if nothing at all, this is our final statement. We're not going to go through any more options. We're done. We're tired. I tried all these things and nothing worked. So then this is our final statement, which is going to be else. If nothing worked, please return none. And so when, again, when you finish any statement, you want to add your little semicolon. So the only thing in Java, the only the only two ways that you will end anything is with a semicolon or with a curly brace. What the curly brace does is it's saying like it's just basically saying that you're talking, this is what the whole thing that it's going to do. Else it's a way of separating code. We can get deeper into that, but basically you're either going to end it with a semicolon or with a curly brace. So now let's go ahead and run our code and let's see what it gives us. Remember, these are if, and there's a different way of writing if else statements to where it's shorter, but we're just going to go over this method for now. There's so many things to learn, and you'll probably have to practice these quite a bit before they fully make sense. But let's go ahead and check them. Let's run them. And let's see if there's any mistakes that we did. Oh, and it passed all our tests. So these are our tests right here, and it's just checking with, so the program is checking with different numbers. And our test, test 1 right here, it's checking with 12 and 12 and seeing if that works some way. 12 plus 12 is 24, so it went right through this one and it passed. And then so forth. So it's checking with different numbers. We'll go over tests eventually as well, but basically it passed all our tests. If we had some type of error, like an extra curly brace it, or if we had something wrong in our code, let me see. What is it? It's gonna give us an error. Let's see what type of error it gives us if we remove the number 2. So now it's saying variable num. So it's saying right here, it tells you right here when you mess up, what did I do wrong? So it says error, cannot find symbol. If num1 plus num2 is 24. Symbol, variable num. Location, class challenge, 1 error. So it's telling, it gives us the exact line where we have the error right here, and it tells us what the error is. So then you can go and look back and be like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? It's all right here. It tells you everything. And you know, this isn't pretty. There's ways to handle this and stuff, but let's do something else. Let's say we forget integer right here. Let's check. It's gonna give us a different type of error. So it's checking, and now it's saying failed. It gives us the line 6, says identifier expected, and then it tells us that it's missing this, and we can see right here 1 error, runtime, challenge error, identifier expected. Okay, perfect. So we know we need an integer. Now let's change this. Let's say we change this to int. We change the method to return an integer instead of a string. What is it going to tell us? Again, the error is in line 6 because all these return statements, they're all returning a string. Oof. So it says failed. Java 8 error, incompatible types. String cannot be converted to integer. Return. Java 12 error, incompatible types. 15, 18. So it's telling us like, hey, all these lines are returning strings, and this method is not supposed to return a string. It's supposed to return an integer. Oh, okay, I messed up. Easy fix. Let me tell it to return a string. Now let's see what else. Let's do this. It's assigned to 24. Let's see what type of error we get in this scenario. It's checking, and we can oof. Unexpected type. If num1 plus num2, and it tells us again the line, the error is that it's an unexpected type. And there you go. So it will always tell you where the error is when you run the program to test it. And again, you'll get a lot more comfortable with these things as we go on. We went over a lot of things in this short challenge. We went over a lot of things, and this is specific to this specific challenge. We went over as many things as we could, but we'll definitely keep going over a lot of things. We'll learn what it all is. We just wanted to do a simple challenge and kind of learn as much about the Java program, the Java language as much as we could off this challenge. We kind of went a little bit over what if statements were, data types, comments, and it gets easier as you keep practicing and practicing. I always recommend practicing challenges, because that is what helps us learn the best. So there's many different programs where we can learn. You can always ask me any questions, and I will always try to explain things in a way that makes sense to you. We all have different ways of learning. We all have different ways of understanding things. And sometimes I feel like I might be going too slow or too fast. Always let me know, because the end goal is for these things to make sense to you. Not to me, to you, the new learner. And, in school, I always had a lot of difficulties understanding sometimes what the programmers that were tutoring me were trying to explain, because they just spoke in a language that made no sense to me. And when it comes to computer science, that could be difficult. You're trying to explain something in English, but you're working in a computer language, so it is a little bit hard sometimes, but it gets easier and easier, and eventually you're coding, and it's so much fun. You can do so many things. But anyways, this is our tutorial for today. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always message me. You can ask me questions at any time. And remember that not only do I want you to ask me questions, I'm not just here to tolerate questions. I welcome them. I highly love being asked questions so much. So I'm here for it.